Sleep, baby, sleep. That was a pretty deep voice. I liked it.
Hello, kiddies. It's me, your old pal, the Crypt Keeper. And you're watching Rottin Roger DeMarco. 3 B's. Blood, boobs, and beasts. Roger, you beast. You're a bloody boob.
Hello, internet fans. It's your old pal Rottin Roger DeMarco here from 3bproductionco.com. And this week, we're going to be talking about Turi Meyer's 1995 film, Sleepstalker. Okay, so here is the plot breakdown. There's a serial killer named the Sandman. He goes on a killing spree across the desert, killing parents and children. He gets caught at the beginning of the film. He gets put to death, but through voodoo, wizardry, mysticism, he comes back made out of sand. It's a weird, fun little plot, and there's not a whole lot going on, but it's super rad. But before we get into my overall thoughts of the film and all of that stuff, first, let's take a look at
Rottin Rogers! Splatter facts.
We have 8 dead bodies. We have 0 titties. We have sand in the eyes. We have exposition nightmares. We have gat giving. Yeah. We have a love story subplot. We have a voodoo rules subplot. And we have one crazy lady who's not that crazy. The methods of death include, but are not limited to, off-screened, my arch nemesis, dropped, quicksanded, and sandstormed. A lot of sand-related things happening in this movie. Okay, so now on to my overall thoughts of this film. This is one of those movies that sort of slipped by under everybody's radar, I feel like, in the mid-90s. There was a lot of these direct-to-video slasher-type films where people were trying their damnedest to create new icon, and a lot of them were falling flat. But this movie is one of the exceptions to the rule. I think that this movie doesn't get a lot of credit, but maybe that's because not a lot of people know about it. So that's why I figured I would talk about it this week. First of all, when you're creating an icon, you got to have a lot of things. You got to have a really good look. So there's sort of a hook to this villain. And the Sleepstalker definitely has that iconic look and a great vibe to him. This Sandman motif where he can turn into piles of sand to get him through key locks and get him inside of cars and tight spaces and things like that. He has a very cool set of abilities that he can use to gain the advantage and make him a terrifying villain. Another thing that you need for a successful franchise villain is a very memorable theme. And this movie knocks that out of the park. It has a very great score, a super underrated score. Not only is the music in the film memorable and haunting and fantastic, but the lullabies that the Sandman sings and almost everything that he says is very memorable. It's catchphrase worthy, like a Freddy Krueger or like a leprechaun. The Sandman competes with all of them. The Sandman has also a very iconic delivery to his lines of dialogue. He has a very deep voice. It sounds like a Leonard Cohen song. Everything he says. It's amazing. It will bother you, but it will also entertain you. You'll be like, man, that guy is weird and creepy. You can't take your eyes off of the Sandman. It's important to say that Jay Underwood plays the lead character of Griffin. And Jay Underwood has been in a handful of films. Most notably, people remember him from the Fantastic Four film that never really came to fruition, the one that was filmed and scrapped. They even made a documentary about it. But Jay Underwood is an underrated actor. He's a very talented guy, but in this movie, it's worth me saying that Jay Underwood is quite possibly the whitest actor in Hollywood, or at least the whitest actor that comes to my mind. And when he says things like dog or my gangbanger piece, it sounds so funny. The way that he delivers these lines, it's so like properly enunciated, so strange. It's one thing that you'll notice when you watch the movie is like how not street Jay Underwood is, and I love it. A couple other things really good about this movie is in sort of a throwaway role, you have Ken Foree playing Detective Rollins. Ken was sort of known in that mid-90s period for getting cast as some sort of detective or police officer in these random roles, like in The Dentist and in this. A lot of weird movies cast him as the tough police officer. In this movie, he does a great job. It's a throwaway role, it's a standard cop role, but it's great to see Ken Foree in there shining and doing a really good job. It's also worth noting that in the flashbacks, when they show Sandman as a young child, I'm gonna butcher this name, Giuseppe Andrews plays the young Sandman. I mean, you only see him a handful of times, but it's kind of cool to see him in this non-speaking role, young kid, and then, you know, he went on to do a lot of great things. He went on to do Cabin Fever and all of these other films. And then you have Peter Vasquez playing Dog Sanchez. Peter Vasquez is always cast as like one of those street tough gang members. So when you see him in this movie, you're like, I've seen that guy in like everything. And he has probably one of my favorite lines of dialogue in the movie. I'm not gonna say it, I'll let you see it. But it involves a gat. So one of the things that I noticed while watching this movie again in preparing this review, there had to have been a reason why I like Sleepstalker so much. And I couldn't quite put my finger on it until the other day when I decided to review this. And I started noticing a lot of similarities with another one of my all-time favorite films. This movie feels so much like Shocker that it blows my mind. You know, the killers have different abilities and different origins, and, you know, there's different family subplots, but it very much feels like Shocker. This is another movie that could have been a franchise that did not become a franchise, and you just wonder, what would Sleepstalker 2 or 3 or 4, what would they have been like? I love this icon. I wish that he was iconic. I wish that everyone knew about Sleepstalker, and that's why I had to do this. I don't have a lot of negative things to say about this movie. It's surprisingly stylistic in its cinematography, in its atmosphere, its mood, all of these things. The overall look of the film is surprisingly better than you would expect for a direct-to-video mid-90s slasher film. It has a real visual flair to it. It's just not something that you see every day. You know, you're not used to that when you're getting a direct-to-video horror film, and it's noteworthy that it just looks better than a lot of the things coming out at that time. It has another one of my all-time favorite resurrection scenes of any horror film, very reminiscent of the resurrection scene in Nightmare on Elm Street 4, when Freddy is sort of getting juicy again. His bones are getting juicy again, and he wakes up. That's the best way I can compare the Sandman's resurrection. And the effects are fucking outstanding. There's a couple of things in this movie that you go, ooh, that did not age well, but they are, you know, computer graphic enhancements and things like that that we weren't ready for. We're still not ready for some of that stuff that they were trying to pass off. It's just no substitute for good practical effects. And even though this film did not have an incredible budget, the practical effects are outstanding. I will say that another thing that makes me like this movie so much is that it's slower paced than the average slasher film. It takes a very long time for the violence to kind of ramp up. And even when it does ramp up, it's not excessively violent. The only thing about this film that I nitpick a little bit is when we're spending that much time building up to the violence, that there should have been a little bit more character development, so we feel a little bit more for these characters. But I'll be honest with you, it doesn't hurt this movie too much for me because I'm not here for Jay Underwood or the supporting cast. I'm here for the Sandman. And this is one of those movies that it didn't need a franchise for you to just jump out the gate and start rooting for the villain. This movie bypassed all of the origin stories, all of the sequels and things like that, and got you straight into liking this killer and wanting this killer to fuck shit up. Going back to the stuff about creating a successful franchise villain. One of the other things that you need in successfully creating a franchise villain is some sort of mythos, some sort of way that can be used against the villain. So this movie has that. It's done very well. It's very smart that water makes the sand fall apart, or that fire turns sand into glass. So he has his set of weaknesses. You would expect everyone to know those weaknesses straight out the gate, but they don't. So it's not until they formulate a plan and decide to fight back that they use that knowledge. And it's awesome. It is just awesome, guys. So I have nothing negative to say about this movie. So in my personal opinion, I have to say that this movie is 100% popcorn as fuck. Because it is exactly that. It is a video store staple. This is a movie that you seeked out at the video store. It has a super rad cover. It looks awesome. The style of the movie is great. The villain is great. The overall package is great. It's a fun ass movie. And that's why it's popcorn as fuck, because it's not gonna scare you. You're rooting for the killer. That's the best type of Friday night to have, is you just wanna watch this guy kill off a handful of people and eat some pizza and drink some soda or whatever and enjoy it. So that's why I had to recommend it this week, guys, because it's fantastic. If I have swayed you, click the link in the description and get a copy of Sleepstalker for you today. But I suppose I should probably get going, because after all, there's a lot of movies out there and somebody's got to watch them. So why not me, right?